Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, good morning. I would like to say thank you for listening to our presentation. It's great to see you guys. Anyway, we are from group 6. There are 4 people, and let me introduce our member. The first one is Laras, the second one is Lisda, the third one is me, Medina, the last but not the least, Mr. Tryo. So the focus or topic of our talk today is the goal of communicative curriculum and roles of teacher and learner. And for me, as the first presenter, I have divided my talk into few sections. So let's start from learning goal. Number one, as you can see on the screen, number one, number two, three, four, five. For number one up to number three, they are learning objective of the goal of communicative curriculum. And for number four and number five, they are learning objective of the role of teacher and learner. Now, let's move to the main course. So let's redefine about communicative curriculum. The communicative curriculum defines language learning as learning how to communicate as a member of particular socio-cultural group. It draws or influence from three major areas: socio-cultural view, cognitive view, and humanistic views in educations. And today, I would like to talk about socio-cultural view and cognitive view. Socio-cultural view, number one. If we talk about socio-cultural view, usually it's like something that involves the social and cultural aspect. Since the social cultural is an approach to understand why humans behave the way they do, and it has perspective to understand human behavior and personality development. And social-cultural perspective are focusing on social context as central to learn, emphasize or stresses the importance of social interactions, communications, and instructions in learning. The last one, the social environment isn't just a place to learn, but we are integrated to it. So also socioculturals deals with social and cultural knowledge. And don't forget, if we talk about sociocultural, it's inseparable with social linguistic. Yep, language is inseparable from its sociocultural context. Nowadays, sociolinguistic has viewed any language as inseparable from its sociocultural text. So, in short, we can conclude that sociolinguistics has been directed toward constructing hypotheses concerning with the nature of these connections between language and society or culture. That's why a key concept in sociolinguistics is focus on the speech community rather than individual. Maybe you guys are wondering what is the relations sociolinguistic for teaching and learning or sociocultural. So since sociolinguistic take up social space in the study of language, so it deals with language in teaching and learning, such as what language do we teach, the background of the student, the status and role of the students and the teacher itself. Examples, if we teach students in remote area, I think it's impossible or it's hard, difficult to them if we as a teacher we use a proper English. I mean, like it's advanced English. Yeah, the students will get difficulty to absorb or to understand the material. But if we know the background of the student, so perhaps when we teach the students, we can mix it with the local language and the simple English. Because sociocultural or linguistic is intended to show how our use of language is governed by such a factor as a class, gender, race, etc. And how can sociolinguistic be used in the classroom? So the first one, making explicit variations of words. So English learner know exactly what is expected. Number two, promoting oral and writing activities such as role play dialogues and idiomatic expressions analysis. The last one, raising social and cultural awareness, so students know how to interpret the surrounding environment. Next, uh, communicative competence. Another theory or another concept besides social culture or social linguistic, we have a communicative competence. The concept of communicative competence has had the greatest impact on the field of language pedagogy because communicative competence also include knowledge of who may speak or may not speak in certain setting, when to speak and when to remain silent, how to talk to person of different status and roles. And also, it deals with the social and cultural knowledge that speakers are present to have, which enable them to use and interpret linguistic forms. And also what to say to whom and how to say it appropriately in any given situations. So, communicative competence itself is the ability to understand and use language effectively to communicate in authentic social and school environment. It has four sections: first, linguistic, strategic, social linguistic, and discourse. After we have learned about social culture view, next we move to cognitive based view of language learning. A cognitive theory of learning sees second language acquisition as a conscious and reasoned thinking process involving deliberate use of learning strategies. Second language learning is not a set of easy steps that can be programmed in a quick way. Usually, the learning of second language is a complex process involving a seemingly infinite number of variables. In cognitive-based view of language learning, the variables can be specified as follow: strategies and tactics, context embedded, and context-reduced language use. Now move to strategies and tactics. So, Seliger distinguish between strategies and tactics in second language acquisitions. Every strategy is usually superordinate, abstract, constant, and long-term cognitive process. These are general cognitive mechanisms used by all learners, ignoring background, age, or acquisitional context. Meanwhile, if a tactics usually individually unique, specialists with tactics to cope with learning tasks, and it is short-term. So, in short, we can conclude that strategy is adopted for a collective group, while tactics mostly applied for individual. Now, context embedded and context reduced language use. This theory is brought by James Kamin. He said that language acquisition theory have directly influenced classroom instructions. Kamin distinguished between two types of language. The first one is basic interpersonal communication skill, or BICS. The second one is cognitive academic language proficiency. So, if basic interpersonal communication skill, it told or the language necessary for day-to-day living, including conversation with friends, informal interactions. Meanwhile, if cognitive academic language proficiency, the language necessary to understand and discuss content in the classroom. So, based on BICS and CALP, Kamin expanded the concept of conversational and academic language to include two distinct types of communications, depending on the context in which it occurs: context-embedded communications and context-reduced language. So, what is context-embedded communications and context-reduced language use? Context-embedded communication provides several communicative support to the listener or reader, such as object gesture, vocal inflections, which help make the information comprehensible. So context embedded rely on various non-linguistic elements which help support meaning. Examples like conversation with physical gestures, storytelling activities that include visual props. So for context-reduced communications provide fewer communicative clues to support understanding. Example are phone conversation, which provide no visual clue, or a note left on refrigerator. So context-reduced rely much on linguistic clue. We can conclude that context embedded close to with BICS, where the conversation is often face to face over many cues to the listener, such as facial expression, gesture, concrete object of reference. If context reduced, it's like CELP, where the language of the classroom in which there are fewer non-verbal cues and the language is more abstract. In the end, we need to distinguish language use in everyday face-to-face where fluency and communications are central or school setting where the learning tasks are much more cognitively demanding. So, it will be continued by Mr. Trio.
The holistic approach to language learning. A holistic approach to learning process will improve creativity and self-expression, nourish cognitive processes, and concern with personality trait of the specific learner. If
The
it turn
fundamental
back
of
due
humanistic
to
curriculum.
critique of the
In
behavioral
many
approach to
instances,
learn.
communicative language programs have incorporated to educational philosophy based on humanistic psychology or a view which, in the context of goal for other subject areas, has been called the humanistic curriculum. In operational terms, a language program which draws on humanistic curriculum goal tries to achieve this objective. 1. Great emphasis is placed on meaningful communication from the learner's point of view. Text should be authentic, tasks should be communicative, outcome should be negotiated and not predetermined. 2. The learner is focal point of this approach and respect for the individual is highly valued. 3. Learning is viewed as a self-realization experience in which the learner has considerable other learners say in are viewed as support group decision making process, help and evaluate themselves and each other as well as the whole process. 5. The teacher is a facilitator who is more concerned with class atmosphere than the adherence to the syllabus or material in use. And 6. The first language of the learner is viewed as a useful aid when it necessarily for understanding and formulating hypotheses about the target language, particularly in the early stage. The goal of communicative curriculum will place language the teaching within the framework of the curriculum itself from a communicative point of view. Communicative curriculum define language learning as learning how to communicate as a member of particular social cultural group. The social convention governing language from and behavior within the group are therefore central in the process of language learning. Can be considered in terms of two major types of meaning. A. The proportional of or conceptual meaning of an utterance. B. Of cognitive, its elocutionary global workout, while the product is about skill, emphasis, learner needs, and learner autonomy as shown in diagram. Summary. Communicative curriculum define language learning as learning how to communicate as a member of particular social cultural group and exploit to expanded content area. expanded process, and expanded product area. In communicative goal, the content of utterance are the proportional meaning and illocutionary force, while type meaning of utterance very notional and functional meaning. Communicative goal expand the three areas of principle: content area, process area, and product area.
Chapter 11: The Roles of Teachers and Learners. Learning Objectives. After learning these chapters, the student will be able to: first, comprehend that teaching and learning as metaphor facilitating both teachers and learners successfully. The second is practice the roles of a teachers and learners in language learning well. The third is facilitate and motivate students to achieve their educational goals effectively. Learning objectives should be brief, clear, specific statements of what learners will be able to do at the end of a lesson as a result of the activities, teaching and learning that has taken place. They are sometimes called learning outcomes. The learning objective or objectives that you use can be based on the three areas of learning. There is knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Learning objectives define learning outcomes and focus teaching. They help to clarify, organize, and prioritize learning. They help you and your student evaluate progress and encourage them to take responsibility for their learning. Facilitating learning. Empowering for both the learner and the teacher besides frees the teacher from many of the burdens that have to be an expert might entail. Regardless of the roles they assume, teachers shape the culture of their classroom, improve student learning, influence practice and production. Traditionally, the language classroom was a place where learners received systematic instruction in the grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation of the language, and we are provided with opportunities for practicing the new features of the language as these were introduced. Methodology training focuses on the most effective ways for teachers present and provide practice in the target grammar. However, it is not only referring to traditional or modern terms, but more about communication strategies. Learning strategies mostly deal with the receptive domain of intake, memory, storage, and recall, while communication strategies relate to the employment of verbal or nonverbal mechanisms for the productive communication of information. Teaching and learning as metaphor. First, metaphors are very useful in teaching because they have already held knowledge as a scaffold upon which to build new knowledge or to illustrate some property. The type of metaphor used in teaching and learning depends on what is to be taught and learned. The metaphor must be chosen to illustrate the required concept and guideline the right direction of teaching learning activities. Choosing the wrong one would be distress for the teachers and mislead for the learner. Second is, metaphors have a great place in teaching and learning. They should be used more as they is the pet of food. The third is, metaphor must be chosen to illustrate the required concept and guide The type of metaphor used in teaching and learning depends on what is to be taught and learned. Metaphors are convenient. They have become established. Writers no longer have to spell out long rational or present elaborate guidelines. The rules of the teacher. 1. The motivator. A teacher gives motivation and spirit to learners that can build confidence from the learners. A teacher should not give a punishment if the learners made a mistake in answering or doing exercise. However, the teacher will continue to support and motivate the learners to fix them all. 2. The mentor or trendsetter. A teacher who prepares himself as a mentor will always increase his potential to enhance learners' growth and development and help learners maximize their educational experiences. Besides, the teacher must realize that they are equipping the learners today for them to stay. 3. The facilitator. A teacher role is recognized as a facilitating one with learners proceeding according to their inner capacities. The teacher must also have an attitude of cooperation and sharing as well as an emphasis on group activities.